How to add intro and outro to your podcast. Using Audacity, version 2.4.2.
Now first, we want to import our intro audio file. So we click on File, Import Audio, and locate your intro file. Right here it is. So we just double click, and there's our intro file. Next, we want to import our podcast. So we click on File, Import Audio, and I just named it Your Podcast. So we click on Your Podcast, and it imports your podcast. Next, we want to import the outro file. So we click on File, Import Audio, Outro. So you see the names of each file. Here we have our intro file right here. We have your podcast file right here. And we have the outro file right here. Next, we want to use our time shift tool, which is located right here. You can enter your function key F5 or just simply put your cursor over this time shift tool. And if you'd like to learn more about time shift, you can go to the Audacity online manual located at the URL shown in this browser window and read more about this time shift tool. So let's left click on this time shift tool, and once we left click, we can simply hold down our left mouse button and we're able to drag these files back and forth. So we can drag our intro file back and forth, as well as our podcast file, and also our outro file. So your intro will be the first audio file. So we'll take your podcast and just put our left mouse button on the file and drag it until it lines up. And you can see when it lines up because you'll have a yellow line right there signifying that it lined up properly. So we have our intro, we have your podcast right here. Now we want to drag over our outro file. Just put our cursor on the outro file, hold down your left mouse button, and drag until it lines up after your podcast. And again, you'll see the yellow line signifying that it's lined up properly. To be able to see all three of these files on the same screen, you can go to View, Track Size, Fit to Width. And now you'll see we have our intro file, we have your podcast file, and we have the outro file. Now, after it's lined up, click on this selection tool to disable the time shift tool. So now we can hold down our left mouse button and it will not go back and forth. And if we wanted to line it up again, we just click on the time shift tool, and then we can hold our left mouse button down on this file and line it up. Sometimes you may want part of the music in your intro to be heard when your podcast begins, and you might want part of the music in your outro to be heard toward the end of your podcast. A lot of times when a podcast is about to end, you'll hear soft music playing, and that signifies that the podcast is about to end. So to have the music play at the beginning of your podcast, in other words, to have part of this intro music to play at the beginning of your podcast, we just left click on this time shift tool, hold down the left mouse button on your podcast, and you drag it over to however much of the music you want to play during the podcast. So let's say you want the music to start right here, And after you set it, you click on the selection tool. And of course, it's going to require you to line this back up. It's very easy to do. Just click on your time shift tool and drag it. We have it lined back up again. So after we line it back up, be sure to left click on the selection tool to turn off the time shift tool. So let's see what that sounds like. Let's just start play right here. This is your podcast to place between, so you hear that the music is now playing along with the words. Now there's 3 ways you can be sure that the words are heard over the music. And one, you can select this section right here and then click on Effect, Built-in, Fade Out. And what that will do is just allow that music to fade out. And if it's too loud still, you can just repeat and repeat. And so that's one way. And another way, you can use amplification to lower the music. So first I'll edit, undo the fade out, edit, undo fade out, edit, undo fade out, because we did it 3 times. Now, let's just simply go to Effect, Built-in, Amplify, and you bring this to a minus number. Let's just say -3. We'll click on that. You see it brought the audio level down. Repeat it, brought the audio level down. Repeat it, brought the audio level down. So that'll make this music quieter than the voice, where you can hear the voice okay. So let's edit, undo those 3 amplify changes. Edit, undo amplify, edit, undo amplify, edit, undo amplify. We're right back where we started from. Another way that you can lower the music to where it will not overpower the audio in your voice and your podcast is to use a feature in Audacity called Auto Duck. For more information on how to use Auto Duck, see my YouTube video entitled Audacity. Use Auto Duck to mix voice and music. To duck the audio simply means to lower the audio volume. When using Auto Duck, the audio file where the audio will be ducked by Auto Duck must be directly on top of the file. You want to be predominantly heard over the file on top. The file on top will be the only one of the 2 files that will have the audio ducked by Auto Duck. In this instance, the intro file should be directly over your podcast file because you want the music audio to be ducked, and you do not want the voice in your podcast to be ducked so that the voice in your podcast can be distinctly heard over the music, yet still being able to hear the music in the background. If you ever need to rearrange the tracks up or down, you can simply go to the drop-down arrow here on a particular track, and you can select Move Track Up or Move Track Down. Let's say, for example, you want to move this track up. Just click here. Now this track has been moved up. And if you want to move it down, just click on the drop-down arrow here and click on Move Track Down. I'll give a short demonstration of how to use Auto Duck. What you do, you simply select the entire file on the top. And the way I select the entire file is just put my mouse cursor on the file, double click, and you'll see that the entire file has been selected. And then I go up here to Effect, Built-in, Auto Duck, And I would just start out with the default settings. And if you don't know what the default settings are, you can just click on Manage, Factory Presets, Defaults. See it's minus 12 dB here. Put your cursor here, hold down your left mouse button, and drag the line up for less music volume reduction, and drag the line down for more music volume reduction. So let's just put it here on 8. Now drag this over a little bit where we can see what happens when I click OK. So I'm going to click OK, and you'll see that volume lowered. Now I'm going to click on Edit, Undo. As soon as I click on Undo, I want you to see how the volume right here goes up. Undo, and let's go to Edit, Redo. Let's play that and see what that sounds like. Just the last portion of this. This is your podcast to place, and you see, using AutoDuck, the voice could still be heard over the music. You may want your outro music to start playing toward the end of your podcast. And if you do, you can left-click on the time shift tool, drag your outro music to where you want the music to start playing here in your podcast, and then left-click on the selection tool to turn the time selection tool off. And to get this music right here lower than the volume of your podcast audio, just highlight the selection of music that overlaps. There's 3 ways that you can reduce that volume of the music. And one is to simply go to Effect, Built-in, Fade In. And the music will be lower and then get louder here. And if it's still too loud, you can repeat Fade In. So let's just listen to that and see what it sounds like just toward the end of the podcast. Let's click play. Between the intro and outro. So that sounds okay. Let's click Edit, Undo, Fade. Edit, Undo, Fade. Now you can just lower the volume if you'd like to. The way you do that is Effect, Built-in, Amplify, and just simply lower the volume a little bit and then click OK. And you see it lowered it some. If you want to lower it some more, just repeat Amplify. Let's see what that sounds like. Between the intro and outro. So you could hear the music and hear the voice. Edit, Undo, Amplify, Edit, Undo, Amplify. Now we're back where we started. And you can also use AutoDuck. Now to use AutoDuck, you need to have the track that you want reduced above the voice track. So let's go over here to this drop down arrow, move track up. Now we see that the music track is above the voice track, which will allow us to use AutoDuck. So let's select this entire file here. Just double click on the file with your mouse. So just double left click on this file to select the entire file. We go to Effect, Built-in, AutoDuck, and you might want to start out with the default settings. So you can just change that over to default. Drag it over to where we can see what happens when we click OK. So we click OK, and you'll see that the audio level went down. If I edit, undo, AutoDuck went back up. So let's go Edit, Redo, went back down. Let's see what that sounds like. between the intro and outro. So the music level has been lowered where we can hear the voice in the podcast, and the music audio level will not overpower the loudness in the voice. So let's see what the entire audio file sounds like now. We'll go to the very beginning of the file, just left click here, it goes to the beginning. Let's play the entire intro, our podcast, and our outro. Welcome to Opportuno, episode 21. It's the little things. This is your podcast to place between the intro and outro. That's all for now. Please visit our website, opportuno.org. That's spelled OPORTUNO.org. Thank you. Okay, that is how you add intro and outro to your podcast. Now, after you've added your intro and your outro to your podcast, you want to export your audio file. And prior to export, you want to set your project rate to whatever hertz you want to export to. And I'd recommend just using the same project rate that you recorded the file in. Most likely might be 96,000 hertz or 48,000 hertz. In this particular case, it's 192,000 hertz. So I have it set to 192,000 hertz. So we go File, Export, and I want to export as a WAV file. If this recording is for a podcast, podcasts are usually MP3 files, but I always like to export it as a WAV file, and then I'll convert that WAV file later to an MP3 file, because a WAV file is a much better quality file in case you want to edit the audio file again. So let's select WAV, and you select what bit rate, and we recorded this in 24 bits. We'll just leave it at 24 bit. Let's just call this My Podcast. And click Save. And you'll see here, your tracks will be mixed down and exported as one mono file. So that's exactly what you want. So let's click OK. And click OK again. Now, if we were to open that file we just saved, We named it My Podcast. You'll see now we have just one mono file that has our intro, our podcast, and our outro all in one mono file. In my YouTube video, Path to Podcasting, it has a section teaching you how to add metadata to your MP3 file that is required prior to uploading your podcast to your podcast hosting site. So that is how I add the intro, my podcast, and my outro into one file to use for my podcast. Please visit our website, opportuno.org. That's spelled OPORTUNO.org for more items that may be of interest to you. Thank you.